Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, welcome back to the Boniface Arts Center. I'm Pat Frueh, your docent for the most recent exhibit. Our exhibit right now is the NMU Student Art Show. These are students who are upperclassmen at Northern Michigan University, and they have a lot to say. This is a great show. There are a lot of pieces upstairs and downstairs in the gallery. There are pieces that have been prized, and the judge of this show went ahead and made some statements about why this person picked what she did about what the winners were. What was cool about that is because there's some there's some statements about this, you can come to the exhibit, pick that up, and see what those pieces were and are, and why she picked what she did. I'm not going to talk about those though, since that's already out there, okay? I'm going to talk about some other pieces, some pieces that just intrigued me, and I hope will intrigue you too. These are pieces in this show that I thought, okay, if you're an art student in the 21st century, what is available to you now that I certainly didn't have access to when I was an art student? And how is art evolving? What's important? And what these artists I'm going to show you today, these three today, are just this extension of old forms made in a new way. So this first one here is by Erin McCormick. And she's titled her piece, Vessels for Memories. Erin has included an artist statement for this piece, and I always like to start there when I'm looking at a piece, because artists have some intentions. They're trying to tell you about what their creative process was like and what drew them to this work. Erin talked about how objects, and I think we've all had this experience, right? Where we see an object, maybe a piece of jewelry, for instance, that we have, or something in our house, and it invokes memory. It reminds us about the person maybe who gave it to us, or a time when we bought that, or we got that, or how we've used that piece before. And we make those meanings out of those things, right? Now, art has been doing this kind of thing forever. The artist has invested a lot of time and attention to invoking memory, our memory and their memory. But this artist is making this in a new way. Now, these vessels that she has hung through a pendant remind me a lot of something in the Catholic Church called reliquaries. Reliquaries, too, are ways to honor saints. And in this way, too, she is honoring the memories of specific people. And she talks about them in her statement, but one person in particular is her mother. And she has symbolized these special people in her life by different pieces of jewelry, rings. And then she has made some really exquisite, detailed pendants to hang so that you get this elevated sense about who these people are and the memories that she has of them. It is how she created these vessels, though, that I thought was really interesting, and I hope that you will take a deeper dive into. She used 3D printing techniques. I say that quite easily, and yet I'll tell you what, I don't really know how that all works. All I know is that they are printers, and we think of printers as making two-dimensional things, right? Pieces of paper, putting down some information. But now there's 3D printing, where we can make a three-dimensional object. And this artist has done this. The center pendant in particular and I'm going to take off my glasses so I see it even better. If you look really closely to this image, or this vessel, you can see all the rings that this is made up of. And that is one of the ways that the printer captures and knows how to make these three-dimensional objects. I'm guessing that there's a lot of process in this three-dimensional printing, and knowing how to code, knowing how to control software, it probably involves a lot. But it's just another aspect of what a 21st century artist might consider as a tool to making some meaningful statement. Maybe an old statement, something that human beings have been interested in forever, like containing memory in a new way. So I hope that you get a chance to look at this one. We're going to go down this way and look at another very contemporary piece. It is 3 prints by Jacob Hausman. And again, there is an artist statement with these 3 pieces. When I first encountered these prints or photographs, I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at. I didn't have the artist statement. And so when I looked at them, I was just intrigued with the abstract forms of this. And abstraction in art means that they've taken an image and essentially focused on what is important in the form of art, the overall form of art, like the composition, or the lines, or the colors and shapes. And they don't necessarily focus on making something look like a real object, which is always something that I have to talk to people about, because art can't really create something to make it look real necessarily. But we have an image, or we have a desire to do that oftentimes, to make things look recognizable. So when I looked at these the first time, I recognized what I would consider to be human faces, and human faces that have been distorted in a way that makes them sort of interesting, even in a textural way. Sometimes when I look at some of the distortions of this image, for instance, on the end. But human beings, the first thing that we ever get interested in looking at are human faces. It starts when we are hours old, and it appears to be a fascination that we have until the end. We see faces in lots of things. You've probably had the experience of looking at, for instance, up at the clouds, and maybe seen a face in the clouds, or maybe some knotty pine woodwork, and you can see faces within that. So human beings just sort of recognize and imagine face in a lot of images, and I certainly could see that here, but not faces that I would say are realistic. Well, then I got very intrigued, because the artist talks about how these images were made. He did not make these images. What he did instead was feed in to a computer what does a human being look like to a machine, and fed in keywords, and the computer formed these images. And these images are to represent what humans look like to a machine. So I just thought that that was a really intriguing turnaround about how we might go about making image. And that, could we even say that a computer is artistic? I happen to think that artistically, these are images that were really interesting to look at. I love the middle one, for instance. It reminded me a lot of Picasso and Cubism and its intention to take a form that we think of as three-dimensional and make it two-dimensional, which is really what a surface, a flat surface is. It's just 2 dimensions. So we have a nose, for instance, a shape that might be out of line or profiled to maybe eyes that are more central. I like the colors in some of these too. I just thought they were really pretty and evocative. So I bet you'd be fascinated too if you came down to look at this one. So we'll go over on this wall all the way across the gallery space. So we're ending today with this piece called Not Your Damsel by Caitlin Snyder. Caitlin too includes an artist statement with this work. And she calls this a collection of weapons. You're looking at this right now, and I'm going to guess you recognize many of these things. You would call them swords, and there's an axe, and knives. She also has included a lot of purple silk flowers on the wall with these images. She seems to be making a couple of different statements. She talks about this, not my damsel, or not your damsel. So she's saying, she's making a statement about gender and gender roles. What does it mean to be female? And what does it mean to be male? And she made these weapons, we call them weapons, and she made them out of clay and ceramics. And I just was utterly intrigued by that. I think that while they're recognizable, the use of material is totally unrecognizable. When I look up at this closely, as you will when you come over, your first thought is that these are really heavy metal objects. And we probably you've seen how swords and knives have been forged in metal smithing. And that's not how she went about this at all. She made these out of clay and then highly glazed them, burnished them, and then created the details like of leather and cord to give that sense of a metal object. They're really striking and beautiful. The level of detail in these, it's really hard to tell that they're not metal. For instance, in the sword up here, you can see the blade looks sharp. There's some dents in it as if it has been hammered. And this is all to fool your eye, because this isn't what you think it is. Again, artists these days just have other abilities to make things that maybe we knew before, and then a lot more flexibility to create art. She is definitely saying that it's okay, I think, to be female and also have a tough side and find creative ways of making something familiar in a new way. So I hope that you get a chance to see Not Your Damsel. I think it's really cool. Many, many pieces in this show have been just great experiments. I was impressed when I looked through it the first time at how many different kinds of things there are here. There's furniture, there's prints, paintings, ceramics, artists at this level should be exploring all the kind of materials that they can. And learning to master them is a lifelong intrigue. So I hope that you'll come down and look at these students and their journey and their beginnings. Thank you very much for being with me, and have a great day.